BBL Supercoach is here. How exciting for another season. This will be my second year of going through and doing some content here, and I'm super excited about it. And there's plenty to go through, including a few new features. As you can see here on my screen, we have a flex player now, which just allows you to be a little bit more flexible, as it says, with your dual positioning, with getting an extra bowler if you wanted an extra bowler, an extra batter, or a keeper, obviously, and your ability to move things around during each round to get things right with your looping on the emergencies. And it just allows to be a bit more flexible in different weeks. And obviously we do see weather becoming a factor in Big Bash. Well, it always is. And we also have guys missing certain games, whether it be they're probably going to play round, the game 2 in that one if they have a double game and not game 1, or there's a little bit of a worry on them being a 50-50 to play. You can move things around with that flex position and having guys on your emergencies on that bench as well, which is really, really cool. So that flex player is going to be awesomely important. Can't wait to see how that one plays out. The second feature for this season is that we're actually going to be only taking the best 11 of 12 scorers this year, with 17 players in total now. So that one extra player there compared to last year, and a little bit more in the salary cap as well, up to $2 million. So with that best 11, we obviously know with batters especially, it's very easy to, if you have a single game, to come out and get a duck and not get a catch or a run out or anything like that. So that 0, that 1, that 3, whatever it's going to be, if they score a 2, comes out of your score, which is going to be really, really helpful especially for the more casual player. It's like, it's frustrating. You pick a guy and he comes out and doesn't score any runs, or one of your bowlers only gets the one over and breaks down with an injury or something like that, then that score will come out of your total, which is obviously really helpful and allows you to take some risks on certain players as well, because there's a few out there that can be hit and miss. They could go for a 50 off 20 balls, or they could get out first ball because they're a bit of a slogger or something like that. Just allows you to have a little bit more freedom with your selections as well. And that $2 million cap, and that's going to come into it now when we do talk about price reactions. So this video here, talking about the new features and a little bit of a focus on just reacting to certain things that we see. And we'll start with my points, and then we'll go over and look from top to bottom on prices. But you obviously see here Matt Short in at $304,000. It's absolutely wild when you only get $2 million to play with. It's a tick under 1/7 of your salary cap when you've got 17 players to select. And we do have a few players in at a really cheap price in that $39K, which is going to help us at certain times of the year, whether it's from round 1 that you could use as a looper, or whether it's later on down the track, which can be used as a looper as well, but also can allow you to fit in potentially a more expensive guy in your starting lineup that could be used as a captain. So Matt Short's in at $304K, Glenn Maxwell's in at $247, 103 average for Matt, 83.8 for that of Glenn. So as you can see, they're the two top scorers by far, and they're clearly owned by a lot of people already since the game has opened just a couple of days ago now. 47% for Matt, 56 for Glenn. It all makes sense because we'll get through the schedule later, and they both have very, very relevant schedules over the first 4 rounds. So those guys there have a 14-point increase on their average last year compared to the next guy who's relevant in Jamie Overton at a 70, who has a very relevant schedule as well, playing next to Matt Short, and they're 2 most important players. Steve Smith won't play at the beginning of this year, so he's in there, but he's not going to be a part of that. And then we get down the line to a couple more 200K players in Bartlett, in Lynn and Hussain, a tick under 200 grand there, and then it goes down from there. So it's going to be very interesting how we play this one, with Short being over the 300K. He has a double in round 2. When we say double, guys, each round has a different set of circumstances. Sometimes a team will have a bye, sometimes they'll play a single, and other times they'll play a double. So Adelaide has a double in round 2, which is really cool, and actually in round 4 as well. And then Maxwell with the Stars, similar to last year, they have a really nice schedule to begin the year. Last year, for those who played, the Stars were pretty poor, and a lot of the guys that we selected, apart from Maxwell in that one and Bo Webster, were pretty average across the board. Osama Mir, these types of guys did okay as well, but they have a double in round 1 and round 3. So with these guys being so important in terms of their averages, it's going to be a really interesting strategy that you need to employ to try and fit one or two of these guys in. So we need to manage our cap well to get these guys in from round one. As I said, I might be using one of those really cheap guys, which we'll pinpoint in a little bit of time. Or you're building up cash in the early rounds or in round one to get to these guys in round 2 or 3, with Short having a double in round 2 and Maxwell back in the double in round 3. And we know how important our captaincy is, especially with guys like Short. If you're hitting 103 average, there's games in there you're hitting 150. There's games you're at 60, 70. And there's a lot of players in this game that go out and get a 10. And if you're getting a double 103 is pretty ridiculous, right? So, and then double it again. So 206 up to a 412 in your score can be almost half your score in some weeks. So that's where, even though he's so expensive and he's probably overvalued, like it'd be very, very hard pressed to find him averaging up at that 103 again, but you're paying for the points in that scenario and paying for double points. And that's where Maxwell in round 1 could be really cool. And then if you can't get the cash to get up to Short, then maybe it's Maxwell to Short in round 2, and then going back to Maxwell again in round 3, kind of going back and forth between the two highest price guys. That could be an option for you, for example. And as I said, we know how important a great captain is. So if you didn't have Short through the year last year, you got absolutely hammered. Very similar to that with Glenn Maxwell. Number 2, with the price reactions, there's some nice overseas talent here this year. I think they're going to make waves. They're going to be pretty relevant for their side. So I'm excited to see how those guys play out, and we'll have a look at a few of those guys here in the next little bit. In terms of best transfers, I think Laurie Evans is going to be awesome for Supercoach, but also awesome just for his team, the Renegades there. He finally gets his opportunity a little bit higher in the order, and in an order that hasn't been as prolific as that of the Perth Scorchers, where he gets to bat sort of 5 or 6 at times, mostly 5 there. And a lot of the time he's coming in the late overs there, and it's very hard for him to build an innings. He comes out and he has to score lightning quick, which we know he can in general. So if he gets an opportunity at 4 in this Renegade side, having 2 game breakers at the top, I think is going to be really, really cool of that order. And then Tom Curran, I had to put the 2 in there because I think they're both great in their own way. Tom being one of the best all-rounders in the game, a lot cheaper in this one, moves over to the Stars, who do need a consistent player. So hopefully his attitude has improved a lot after the issues that we saw last year with Tom, and he can come out and have a great season for the Stars, who, as I said, need that consistent player, and they haven't had that, and they've had a really, really tough BBL over years now. So they're going to be really, really interesting players, and some 2 guys I think you need to look at in your Supercoach sides. And lastly, there's a clear group of fallen guns, especially in the bowlers slot. And for those that have played a couple of years, we do know that the bowling side of things, they usually get more balls, obviously, unless a batsman goes nuts. But they have usually more opportunities to get points. And that's why we like to target bowlers, and we like to target bowlers that are in the all-rounder slot. So you can pick them in your bat spot, but they're more of a bowling all-rounder. Those types of players are really important, just because batting in 2020 cricket is very hit and miss, and it's very hard to be consistent. Whereas as a bowler, you obviously have the opportunity to get economy rate bonus, dot balls, and then wickets can come. Whether you get hit for 40 and don't get the economy rate bonus, you could still get 2 for 40 getting wickets at the end. So they're a lot more of a safer pick. So something to look at there. And if you can get cheaper guys in that bowling slot that have been previous guns or have been, these guys I'm talking about under 100k, which we'll get to in Zampa, Kane Richardson, these types of guys. Henry Thornton is down there as well. These types of players there, they're going to be super relevant to help you make some money, but obviously try and lock in some pretty regular, consistent points. I think that's going to be a big win there. And lastly, before we go and look at some of the players and show you my reaction there, is the schedule over the first 4 rounds is where the most importance is, because you're looking to get points on the board early. Points on the board early usually means that player has done well and they're making some cash as well. So even the more expensive guys, the mid-range and the up-top guys. And then also your cheapies, getting them, whether they're in a team with doubles, to get you a couple of quick price rises. That's obviously the best way to go. But even focusing on those single game players. Last year, I think I focused a little bit too much on getting guys from the doubles without focusing on how good that player was. So make sure you look at, if they're on a single, even for a bunch of weeks in a row, make sure they have a clear role. and that they're a very high chance of making money and getting you good points anyway, rather than just focusing on getting as many double game guys in. With all is great, but if they're not a really prevalent player in their team, or they're not usually very good in the Big Bash, then that's something that I would probably push away from, just for the sake of getting a double guy and focus on getting that good single guy that will score you fairly well, even with the one game, and making you cash. So just keep an eye out on that. But in round one, we have the Stars and the Renegades on the double, playing twice there. So two important teams there. As you see in round two, it's Strikers and Scorchers that play twice, which is going to be fun. And then you have round three is Sixers, Stars, and Heat playing the double there, with Renegades going on to a bye. So they have the double early, move to a bye, but then they have a double again in round four with the Strikers. So you see the Stars and the Strikers both having two doubles in the first three rounds with no buys, and then Renegades having the two doubles with one bye in that first three rounds there. Sorry, Strikers have two doubles in the first four rounds, and then Renegades are the same in the first four rounds there. And then Sixers, Heat, and Scorchers have one double in round three for Sixers and Heat, and then the Scorchers have their double in round two for Scorchers, which is fun. So they're usually a really fun team to play with, given they're a really strong squad as well, and they mainly just lose Evans, and the rest stays the same over that for their team there, the Perth Scorchers. So that's going to be a fun one for them. But now let's just have a quick look at some of the prices that we've got. I mentioned those first few guys there. You move to some of the guys that did really well last year. You've got Overton, Bartlett, Chris Lynn played great in his 7 games. You had Akil Hussein with 1 game for 74. He gets priced up there according to that, to his talent, obviously. Paul Walter had a cracking year. You had Aaron Hardy, who had some really good moments. You got to score some good runs. He got to bowl decent overs sometimes. Sometimes he didn't. But he ended up at a 177 price, and is going to be someone that's really relevant again. Neeser at 175. He had a very up and down year. He had moments where he did really well, but he also didn't bowl a lot of overs. So, coming into the season with an injury, if he's a bit fresher this time, he's going to be a really fun player to target for their double. Alex Carey in there, just played the 1 game for 81. Good stuff from him. Webster had his moments last year, so he'll be relevant again. Picked up by 40% of teams. Samsey, really solid year. Berendorf, around the same spot. Jackson Bird was good. We see Ollie Pope and Shy Hope come on over to the Strikers and then the Hurricanes, with the Strikers being a little bit more important. So Ollie Pope becomes an interesting option. Tim Seyfarth there, we'll get into learning a lot more about some of the internationals. We know a lot about the local guys, or the guys that have been here before, but Tim, a wicketkeeper bat, coming over for the Renegades. We'll have to do some more study, and once I've dived into all of the players, I'll get more knowledge on some of the guys that I haven't seen as much of in international cricket. Tom Curran, we know, is a much higher price guy in usual terms than this, only averaging the 42 last year. We know he's much better than that. And then Ben Duckett comes over, and Finn Allen, two really, really talented opening batters. So Ben coming over to the Stars, a really important team. He's going to be of interest. I think he's very well under-owned at 13% compared to some of the other guys, but he'll be a fun one. Lockie Ferguson comes over as well. He's going to be really, really cool to watch. Got to play cricket with him a bunch of years ago before he made his international debut. But again, you'll see percentages, ownership here, very low for teams that don't have a tremendous amount of relevance in that first bunch of rounds. So you can see people are playing the schedule in early picks, that's for sure. But I suppose if you're someone that's in here picking your team early, you are crazy like myself and a lot of other super coaches that absolutely love this. So yeah, get in there, get some good stuff going in your early teams, that's for sure. Well, Warner's obviously going to be here playing the entire Big Bash this time, so 152k. Do you find him to be of relevance? We know he only played the 2 games last year and didn't go too crash hot, but if he's got this whole time to focus on T20 cricket, I think that he's still got a bit in the tank to do really well there for sure. Matty, as long as Stewie Broad's not over. Matty Wade at 150, he's retired from international cricket, so I think he's going to have a really nice Big Bash season here. And that's what I'm expecting. Lance Morris has every chance to go nuts this year. Andrew Ty and Josh Inglis. I think Inglis is an interesting one. If he's going to stick in that 4 slot, I think he really should be batting a bit higher, but we'll see how that one plays out for Inglis. if we can get him opening or batting 3, he becomes a super relevant guy, but I'm not sure that it's going to happen for him. We had Chowdhury have a really good year. Jordan, Dan Hughes, really solid, but not guys we probably want to look at. McDermott was solid enough for his price point, similar with Kuhneman. Dwarsh just fell away towards the back end of the year a bit after having a really cracking start, and is usually begins the year a bit more expensive. We mentioned Laurie Evans as a guy that I might look to target, but he is bat only, which is a tough one. Sutherland ended up having starting higher, a little bit higher last year, had a cracking start and then slowed off a bit. Philippe 132, along with James Vince, two guys that can have decent games, but shows the more bat only or keeper players, with Munro as well, that can have slower starts and can have slower seasons because they have really good games and they're in amongst some really low games and ducks and the like and terrible strike rates. So that's the worry with some of these batters. But we also saw that with bowlers last year with like Zampa and these guys that I mentioned. Jai Richardson, someone 130k, has been knocked down massively. He was over 200k, extremely expensive last year, and he had a tough one, only averaging 30. So he's someone that can come out and do really well. Fraser McGurk, we know what we saw from him last year, and he could have really incredible games in there as well, which we'll definitely expect. Sam Amir played the 5 games, so he has a terrific pedigree and was really solid in his time out there. Cameron Boyce had a cracking year. You've got guys like Cooper Connolly who'll bat in the middle, bowl some overs. And then you've got Spencer Johnson, came into the season a little bit injured and definitely has more potential. So there's a lot of guys that you could select, and you get down to some of the overseas guys that are in the cheaper category there. And Fabian Allen, you got Tom Alsop, Jacob Bethel. Just going to be dependent on role for them as to if they become super relevant or not. And that at that price, Jamie Overton, these types of guys, Paul Walter, came into the year at a similar price to this, and if they were able to get the role and have a really cracking season there, so it could happen for these guys. And then Tommy Rogers, a really down year for him, considering he was up near the 200 mark last year after a cracking season, so he could come into it and do really well. You have Matt Hurst, Keaton Jennings, Jafar Chauhan there, who come in at 117.5 as well. Okay. Which again, depending on their role, I don't expect these guys to have too much of a role to start the season, but we'll learn more as the season gets closer. We've still got 44 days, so a month and a half until we get cranking on December 15. There you go. Tanvi Sangha, someone who will be of interest at some point in the year. Sam Billings moves over to the Thunder. Still expecting him to bat sort of that 4-5 mark, so at his price, he'll probably get more hits, to be fair, earlier on, as we've seen with Thunder sometimes, but he's dropped down a little bit on his price from last year. Potential option, Nathan Ellis has dropped down a bit as well, so keep him in your thoughts. Swepson had a really cracking start to the year and then fell away, so he's at 110, not the 70 or whatever he was last year. Jimmy Pearson just played the 1 game, so if he's available, he'll be interesting. Got that 52 in that time. Hilton Cartwright just bats a bit too low, but we saw him scream into relevance at certain times last year. And then we're getting into some of the cheaper guys that I mentioned. Wes Agar, Henry Thornton, Kane Richardson, Nathan McAndrew, all down a fair bit from their starting spots from last year. Mozon Reeks could have potential decent start. If we don't see McSweeney in the test setup, which has a potential option, he's at 93k, and I think he's improving as a player each and every year. It's just him in T20s versus him in 50 over and test stuff is probably where he needs to show that growth if we want to select him in the Big Bash. Paddy Dooley had a tough year at 88k. You've got Scott Boland, if he gets a few more games, he could be of interest at 84k. Stoinis at 84k again. Does he have these really good games that he had a couple of months ago? Meredith at 83k, Zampa at 80k, Ollie Davies at 78k, all guys that could definitely do well, along with Tim David. Again, just probably bats a bit too low. It's weird. He seems to play like Stoinis, play way better for Australia than he does in the Big Bash. They're both showing that type of play at the moment. Ashton Turner probably bats a bit too low for their side. You got Hamish McKenzie at 69k, who is a chance to make this Stars side as well. And then you'll see different cheaper guys down below, but not too many of interest at this point. Nathan Lyon in there at 58k. Bloody Sam Harper. Don't fall for the trap, guys, at 58k. He might do okay, but don't bank on him being a scorer. I'd probably have him on the bench. You've got some decent guys with a high percentage down here in Jilks. Madison at 58k, and then Jordan Buckingham. If Mano gets that 3 spot, that'll be interesting for sure. Then Jake Doran at 39.5k. I think people are seeing him as, a cheap guy that they could slot in there, which I suppose they could do with other positions, but it's more with Doran, just so we could keep a bat that gets people involved. And then you got Constas, who might play some games, and then Will Salzman as well at some point. 2 of the younger guys in that Thunder setup that have a decent chance of playing at some point in the year and have the upside, which is really cool. So there's the price reaction, guys, the new features, just some thoughts on general team makeup with around your captaincy, and then it's just finding those guys that have a little bit of value, and I think there's plenty of them. We'll delve into each team one by one. We'll delve into strategy. We'll show my early team off. I've got a little bit of a setup right now, but I haven't studied all of the international players yet, so we'll get into that generally where I think the teams will line up, and we'll just learn so much more over the next month. There'll be more signings. There'll be plenty going on, and just a big thank you so much for joining me for our opening BBL Supercoach video for 2024-2025. I can't wait for the season, and I'll get out some league codes in the description below. We'll start off with some head-to-heads. We'll get a overall going as well. That'll be good fun. So thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next Big Bash video.